Welcome to today's webinar. You know you need containers. Now what? I'm Todd Millard, CEO of Crossvale, and I'm excited to have you join us today. I will get started with a little about Crossvale, then hand this over to Josh. But before we dive in, let's do a quick poll in the chat. Tell us, are you currently using containers in production, experimenting with them, or still in the research phase? We'd love to understand where you're coming from today. We'll wait a few seconds to get some answers in. Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. I'm here representing Crossvale. We're a technology consulting firm that's laser focused on helping enterprises modernize their infrastructure and applications. Now, we've been in the container and cloud native space since really the early days of this technology. And let me tell you, over the years, we've seen every possible way that container adoption can go right. And unfortunately, we've also seen plenty of ways it can go spectacularly wrong. So we bring that real world battle tested experience to everything we do. What makes our perspective unique is our relationship with Red Hat. We're actually one of just a small group of global Red Hat partners worldwide that's been invited into their exclusive PPA program. That's their Partner Practice Accelerator program. This is invite only for their most strategic partners. But beyond that, we also hold a seat on Red Hat's Global Commercial Partner Advisory Council, where we help shape the future direction of their commercial partnerships. So when we talk about container adoption today, we're bringing you insights not just from our own client work, but from our position at the heart of the Red Hat ecosystem. With that foundation, I'm excited to turn things over to Josh, one of our senior consultants, who's going to walk you through the practical side of what we're seeing in the field. Josh, take it away.
Thank you, Todd. Glad to be here and welcome everyone. One of the things we'll be discussing today is a container-first strategy. So first, let's start out with what does container-first really mean? When we say container-first, we don't mean containerize everything immediately. What we mean is approaching your modernization strategy with containers as the primary target architecture, while being strategic about what, when, and how you containerize. Think of it like renovating a house. You wouldn't start tearing down walls without a blueprint, right? The same principle applies to containers. You know, we often hear about some common challenges. Just last month, I chatted with several IT leaders, and here's what they told me. We jumped into Kubernetes thinking it was the solution, but now we're juggling 5 different clusters, and it's a mystery what's running where. We thought our container project would be a money saver, but surprise, surprise, our cloud bill decided to double. The teams split down the middle. Half of them are all in on containers, while the rest are pretty much scared stiff. Does any of this strike a chord with you? If you're nodding, you're in good company today. Now we'll switch gears a little and talk about the business drag of legacy infrastructure. Let's start with a reality check. How many of you are still running critical applications on VMs that were provisioned years ago? Here's what we typically see. A new project request comes in, and it takes 2 to 3 weeks just to get the infrastructure provisioned. Then, another few days to configure it. By the time you're ready to deploy, the business requirements have already changed. Meanwhile, your competitors are deploying updates multiple times per day. That's not hyperbole. Companies like Netflix deploy thousands of times per day using container orchestration. If we look at the resource utilization reality, here are some numbers that might surprise you. The average VM utilization in enterprise environments is between 12 to 18%. That means you're paying for infrastructure that's sitting idle 80% of the time. Containers typically achieve 60–80% utilization rates. That's not just better efficiency, that's transformational cost savings. What containers actually unlock? Beyond just speed and efficiency, containers unlock 3 critical business capabilities. First, true agility when your application is containerized You can deploy it anywhere, on-premises, cloud, multi-cloud. You're not locked into a specific infrastructure vendor or configuration. Second, AI and ML readiness. Here's something people don't talk about enough. Most AI and machine learning workloads are designed to run in containers. If you're not container ready, you're not AI ready. Third, developer productivity. Your developers can now work with identical environments from their laptop to production. No more "it works on my machine" conversations. Let me share a real-world example that really brings this home. We recently worked with a manufacturing company, not a huge enterprise, but a solid mid-sized operation running about 200 virtual machines spread across 3 different data centers. When we first engaged with them, they were spending $45,000 every single month just on their infrastructure costs. Now, after we helped them containerize their applications and optimize their infrastructure, guess what happened? That monthly bill dropped to $18,000. And here's the kicker. Their performance actually got better and their reliability improved. So let's do the math on that. We're talking about $27,000 in monthly savings, which translates to $324,000 in annual savings. And that's just the direct infrastructure cost reduction. That doesn't even factor in the productivity gains their teams are seeing or how much faster they're able to get new features and products to market. Now, this was a company with 200 VMs. If you're sitting there thinking about your environment, maybe you've got 1,000 VMs or 2,000 or even more. Just imagine what that ROI could look like when you scale those numbers up. The potential savings become really compelling really quickly. Now, let's get into the meat of why so many container initiatives end up failing. I've personally seen this pattern play out dozens of times over the years, and it almost always follows one of 3 predictable paths. Mistake number 1, the lift and shift trap. This is probably the most common one we see. Teams take their existing monolithic applications and just wrap them in containers. It's like putting a sports car engine in a horse-drawn carriage. You're just not going to get the benefits you expected. I'll give you a perfect example. We had a client who containerized their ERP system without making architectural and process changes to gain the value of containers. 6 months later, and this is the kicker, they were actually spending more on infrastructure than they were before containerization, with 0 improvement in deployment speed or reliability. 0. Mistake number 2, skills gap underestimation. Here's the thing. Containers aren't just a technology change. They're a cultural and process change. We've seen organizations deploy these beautiful Kubernetes clusters and then 3 weeks later realize their operations team has absolutely no idea how to troubleshoot them when things go sideways. Mistake number 3, toolchain overload. The container ecosystem has over 300 different tools available. That's not an exaggeration, over 300. And teams often try to evaluate and implement multiple tools simultaneously. What happens? Analysis paralysis. They get stuck in evaluation mode for months. Now, let me share some real-world warning signs we see that indicate you're heading toward container sprawl. These are the red flags that should make you pause and reassess. You've got multiple container platforms running because different teams chose different orchestration solutions. You have inconsistent security policies. Each cluster has completely different security configurations. There's no centralized monitoring. You literally can't see what's running where. And the big one, runaway costs. Your cloud bill keeps growing every month, but you can't trace it back to specific applications. Here's something we see all the time. Kubernetes without a plan equals trouble. Kubernetes is incredibly powerful, but it's also incredibly complex. We've seen teams spend 6 months just trying to get their first application deployed because they didn't understand the networking requirements, the storage considerations, security implications, or backup and disaster recovery needs. One client put it perfectly. He told me, "We thought Kubernetes was the answer, but we didn't know what the question was." Now let's talk about the hidden costs that nobody talks about. Beyond the obvious infrastructure costs, failed container projects have some really expensive hidden costs. Extended timelines, projects that should take 3 months end up stretching to 12 months. Consultant fees, teams end up hiring expensive specialists to come in and fix the problems they created. Opportunity costs, while you're struggling with containers, your competitors are moving ahead. And team burnout, your best engineers get frustrated with the chaos and start looking elsewhere. Let me tell you about a conversation I had just last month that really illustrates this. I was talking to a CTO who said, "We deployed OpenShift 6 months ago. We have Red Hat support. We're good." 3 weeks later, this same CTO called me at 2 a.m. Their production environment was completely down. Their team was scrambling around like crazy, and Red Hat support had given them debugging steps but couldn't actually fix their specific architectural decisions or integrations. Here's what he learned the hard way. Red Hat is not your operations team. Don't get me wrong, they're absolutely exceptional at supporting their software. But they don't know your environment, your specific architecture decisions, or your integration complexities. They're not on call 24/7 for your specific setup. And here's the key point. They're not helping you prevent the next incident. They only get called after something has already gone wrong. So how do you keep your organization from falling into these same traps that we see others stumble into over and over again? This is exactly where our Container First assessment comes in. The Container First assessment is a structured, 2-week engagement that's specifically designed to give you complete clarity on your container strategy before you write a single line of code or provision your first cluster. Let me walk you through how this works. Week 1 is all about discovery and analysis. We start with a comprehensive analysis of your current environment. We do an application portfolio review where we catalog every single application, understand all the dependencies, and assess containerization readiness. And here's something important. Not every application should be containerized. We help you identify the right candidates and, just as importantly, which ones to leave alone. We also do a full infrastructure assessment. We evaluate your current infrastructure, your network topology, security requirements, and compliance needs. And we do a team readiness evaluation, where we assess your team's current skills and identify specific training or hiring needs. Week 2 is strategy and roadmap development. This is where we create detailed architectural blueprints showing exactly how containers will fit into your specific environment. We do risk mitigation planning. We identify potential challenges and create mitigation strategies before they become problems, not after. And we provide ROI modeling with detailed financial projections showing costs, savings, and your timeline to value. Now, what do you actually receive at the end of these 2 weeks? You get a prioritized application roadmap that tells you which applications to containerize first, second, and which ones to leave alone entirely. You get detailed architecture plans, network diagrams, security models, storage strategies, everything your team needs to actually start implementation. You get financial models with ROI projections, cost comparisons, and budget planning tools. You get a skills development plan with specific training recommendations and timelines. And you get a 90-day implementation plan with detailed project milestones, dependencies, and success metrics. So how do we actually determine readiness? Our assessment methodology evaluates applications across 5 key dimensions. Technical compatibility. Can this application actually run effectively in containers? Business value. What's the real ROI of containerizing this specific application? Risk profile. What could go wrong and how do we prevent it? Dependencies. What other systems or applications need to be considered? And team readiness. Does your team have the skills to support this application in containers? Let me give you a real example of how this plays out. We recently worked with a financial services company that had 47 applications they wanted to containerize. Our assessment revealed some really interesting findings. 12 applications were perfect candidates for immediate containerization. 23 applications needed minor modifications first before they could be containerized effectively. 8 applications should actually remain on VMs for compliance reasons. Containerizing them would have created regulatory issues. And 4 applications should be completely rebuilt as cloud-native services rather than just containerized. This clarity saved them months of trial and error and prevented several really costly mistakes. Instead of spending a year trying to figure this out through experimentation, they had a clear roadmap in 2 weeks. Now, looking at this diagram here, you can see the real benefits that enterprises gain from containerization and why it's such a compelling technology transformation. We're talking about multi-cloud flexibility, the ability to run your applications anywhere. You get robust testing and continuous deployment capabilities that dramatically speed up your development cycles. There's powerful version control and isolation that gives you much better application management. You gain incredible portability. Your applications can move seamlessly between environments. Your infrastructure becomes much more resource-friendly and cost-effective. Security actually improves when done correctly. You can reproduce environments easily, which is huge for troubleshooting and scaling. And perhaps most importantly, you develop a true DevOps culture that transforms how your teams work together. These are real, tangible benefits that we see our clients achieve every single day. But here's the critical point. The assessment is just the beginning. There's a massive operations challenge that most organizations aren't prepared for. Here's where many organizations stumble after what seems like a successful assessment and initial deployment. They assume that getting OpenShift up and running means they're done. They think they can just hand it off to their existing IT operations team and move on to the next project. But your OpenShift platform isn't just another server that you can set and forget. It's a living, complex, and incredibly dynamic environment that demands constant tuning, governance, and deep contextual understanding of how all the pieces fit together. I've seen this pattern play out too many times. Organizations celebrate their successful container deployment. There's usually a nice little celebration. Maybe some emails going around about the successful launch. But then 6 months later, they're struggling with operations in ways they never anticipated. Without full-time specialized OpenShift expertise on your team, here's what typically happens. Incidents become frequent and completely unpredictable. Your compliance processes become reactive instead of proactive. You're always scrambling to meet requirements instead of staying ahead of them. Your teams end up spending more time recovering from problems than actually improving and innovating. Root cause analysis becomes guesswork instead of science. You're making educated guesses about what went wrong rather than having the deep expertise to really understand the issues. And here's the part that really hurts organizations. During every escalation, your culture, ownership, and decision-making processes get completely tangled up. People start pointing fingers, teams start working in silos again, and all those DevOps cultural benefits we just talked about start to erode. This is the hidden operational reality that nobody talks about in those glossy container adoption case studies. Now I want to share a real-world case study that perfectly illustrates everything we've been talking about today. This is a healthcare technology company that came to us facing the exact same challenges many of you are probably dealing with right now. This wasn't some massive Fortune 500 enterprise with unlimited budgets. This was a mid-sized healthcare technology company that had grown rapidly and found their legacy infrastructure becoming a serious business liability. Sound familiar? What makes this case study compelling is that they followed the exact methodology we've been discussing. They started with our container-first assessment, avoided common pitfalls that derail most container projects, and then leveraged ongoing operational expertise to ensure long-term success. But here's what's really interesting. They didn't just achieve technical wins. They transformed their entire approach to infrastructure and operations in a way that directly impacted their bottom line and their ability to serve healthcare clients. Let me walk you through their journey because I think you'll see your own organization's challenges reflected in their story. Starting with the challenges of legacy infrastructure, this company was dealing with lengthy provisioning processes and incredibly low VM utilization. We're talking about 12 to 18% average utilization rates, which is just burning money. They were experiencing real business drag because their infrastructure couldn't keep up with their growth. But containers offered them the promise of 60 to 80% better utilization, improved agility, better AI/ML readiness, and significantly improved developer productivity. The question was, how do you get there without falling into the traps that derail most container initiatives? So, how did they avoid the chaos that derails most container projects? They'd seen other companies in their space struggle with container adoption. They knew about the common mistakes, the lift and shift trap where you just wrap existing applications in containers without architectural changes. They'd heard horror stories about skills gap underestimation, where teams deploy beautiful Kubernetes clusters and then realize nobody knows how to operate them. Most importantly, they recognized the warning signs of container sprawl: multiple platforms, inconsistent security policies, no centralized monitoring, and runaway costs you can't trace back to specific applications. This is exactly why they chose the Crossvale container first assessment. Instead of jumping in headfirst, they invested in our structured 2-week engagement to get complete clarity on their container strategy before writing a single line of code. During those 2 weeks, we did comprehensive analysis of their current environment, evaluated their application portfolio, assessed infrastructure and team readiness, and developed detailed architectural blueprints. We identified potential challenges and created mitigation strategies before they became problems. And here's what the assessment revealed. Out of 15 critical applications they wanted to containerize, our assessment showed that 8 were perfect candidates for immediate OpenShift migration, while 7 needed modernization first. This clarity was absolutely crucial. Without it, they would have spent months trying to containerize applications that weren't ready. Additionally, we discovered 16 commercial software products that could switch from VMs to containers, since the ISV had already prepared containerized versions. The results after following our roadmap were dramatic. They achieved a 67% infrastructure cost reduction, hundreds of thousands of dollars annually. Deployment times went from weeks to days, 85% faster. They achieved zero unplanned downtime after migration, which in healthcare technology is absolutely critical for patient care systems. But here's where most organizations would declare victory and move on. Success of a container initiative goes way beyond that initial deployment. You need dedicated operational expertise to ensure reliable platform performance, proactive incident prevention, and efficient compliance management. This is where our PodOps service became game-changing for them. While Red Hat provides excellent platform support, They needed someone who understood their specific environment, architecture decisions, and business requirements. With PodOps managing their ongoing operations, they now have 99.9% uptime with proactive monitoring, 24/7 expert coverage for less than the cost of a single full-time engineer, and their internal teams can focus on innovation instead of firefighting. The healthcare company's CTO summed it up perfectly. The assessment saved us from making costly mistakes, but PodOps is what lets us sleep at night knowing our patient-critical systems will be available when needed. That's the complete journey: assessment, strategic implementation, and operational excellence. Each piece is critical, and skipping any one of them is where we see organizations struggle. Let's step back and talk about the bigger picture here. Modernizing through containers and platforms like OpenShift isn't just a technology decision. It's a business-critical transformation that can make or break your competitive advantage. Without strategic planning and operational excellence, even well-funded container initiatives can stall completely or fail outright. And I've seen this happen to organizations with massive budgets and great intentions. Let's talk about the common container adoption challenges we see over and over again. Many organizations fall into that lift and shift trap we discussed earlier. They underestimate the skills gap their teams face. They overcomplicate the toolchain by trying to evaluate too many tools at once. And critically, they fail to align platform capabilities with actual business outcomes. Without a clear strategy from day one, that initial momentum and excitement often leads to frustration 6 months down the road. Teams start questioning whether containers were the right choice at all. Here's what really hurts: the hidden costs of failed container projects. Failed or delayed container projects carry significant hidden costs that most CFOs never see coming. We're talking about extended timelines that stretch budgets thin, reliance on expensive consultants to come in and fix problems, missed opportunity costs while competitors move ahead, and burnout of your best internal teams. These failures rarely show up on day one. They compound rapidly over time without experienced guidance, and by the time leadership realizes there's a problem, you're often 6 to 12 months behind schedule and significantly over budget. This is exactly why we developed the Container First Assessment. Our CFA is a 2-week structured engagement that's specifically designed to avoid these pitfalls before they happen. We assess your application portfolio to identify the right candidates for containerization. We define your ideal architecture based on your specific requirements. And we deliver a completely customized roadmap to help your team succeed faster and with complete confidence. Think of it as insurance against making expensive mistakes that we've seen dozens of other organizations make. But here's the critical point: even the best strategy fails without strong execution. This is the operations challenge that most people don't talk about. Operational excellence in container platforms requires real-time visibility into what's happening across your entire environment. It requires proactive governance, not reactive firefighting. And it requires deep OpenShift expertise that most internal teams simply don't have. Without proper operational support, your teams will face avoidable issues, reduced performance, and missed SLAs. And in today's business environment, you can't afford any of those things. So here's the bottom line: strategy plus operations equals success. Here's the truth that nobody wants to hear. If you're running OpenShift without dedicated operational expertise, you're not saving money, you're deferring risk. And deferred risk always comes due, usually at the worst possible time. Every organization we work with eventually faces the same choice: invest in proper operations up front or pay much more to recover from preventable incidents later. There's no middle ground here. DIY operations is a gamble with your business continuity. PodOps is an investment in predictable, reliable platform performance that lets your teams focus on innovation instead of firefighting. The question isn't whether you can afford to invest in proper container strategy and operations. The question is whether you can afford not to. All right, now we'd love to answer some questions about containers, OpenShift, modernization strategy, or how to get started with your container journey. Let me check what's coming in here. Okay, here's the first question I'm seeing. How long does a typical container migration take? Great question, and this is one we get all the time. It really depends on the scope and complexity, but here's what we typically see in the real world. For simple web applications, you're looking at about 2 to 4 weeks. For complex enterprise applications with lots of dependencies and integrations, we usually see 2 to 4 months. And for a full enterprise portfolio migration, you're looking at anywhere from 6 to 18 months. The key here is phasing the migration properly, starting with the easiest wins and building momentum. This is exactly what the Container First assessment helps you plan out. We identify which applications to tackle first, second, and which ones to leave alone entirely. Let me grab another question here. Question number 2. What about security? Are containers actually secure? This is a fantastic question because there's a lot of FUD out there about container security. The truth is, containers can actually be more secure than traditional VMs when they're implemented correctly. You get smaller attack surfaces because containers only include what's absolutely necessary. You get immutable infrastructure, which means once a container is built, it can't be changed. You get built-in vulnerability scanning that catches issues before they reach production. And you get network microsegmentation that isolates workloads from each other. The key is implementing security from day one as part of your architecture, not treating it as an afterthought 6 months later. Another question coming in. What about ongoing operations? How do we avoid those dreaded 2 a.m. phone calls? This is exactly why we developed PodOps for OpenShift. Think about it. Hiring internal OpenShift subject matter experts is incredibly expensive, and it still leaves you with coverage gaps. One engineer goes on vacation or leaves the company, and suddenly you're vulnerable. PodOps gives you 24/7 SME coverage for less than the cost of a single full-time engineer. But more importantly, we're not just responding to incidents after they happen. We're preventing them through proactive monitoring, daily health checks, and policy enforcement. The difference is this. Without PodOps, your uptime depends on overworked staff and hope. With PodOps, cluster health and uptime are owned by experts who live and breathe OpenShift operations every single day. Let me grab one more question here. How is PodOps different from Red Hat support? Great question, and this is a critical distinction that a lot of people miss. Red Hat provides excellent support for their software. Don't get me wrong, they're fantastic at what they do. But they're not your operations team. They don't know your specific architecture, your integrations, or your business requirements. They're not on call 24/7 for your specific environment, and they don't perform root cause analysis or help prevent the next incident. PodOps is fundamentally different because we learn your environment inside and out. We live in your workflows and become fluent in your specific tooling and processes. We're integrated into your Jira, ServiceNow, Teams, and Confluence. When something goes wrong, we don't just help you debug. We understand the full context and can fix it quickly because we know your setup intimately. I'm seeing more questions coming in, but we're running short on time. If you asked a question that we didn't get to today, we will absolutely answer you by email. and we're happy to do a phone call if you'd like to discuss your specific situation in more detail. Now, before we wrap up, I want to make a special offer to today's webinar attendees. For the first 10 organizations that commit to a container first assessment in the next 4 weeks, we're including some significant bonuses. A container security review that's normally a $15,000 value, completely free. Extended support with 30 days of post-assessment architecture oversight to make sure your implementation stays on track. And a complimentary 90-minute PodOps consultation session to discuss your ongoing operational strategy. For organizations that are ready to move beyond just assessment to full operational excellence, we're offering the first 3 months of PodOps services at 25% off for webinar attendees who commit by then, end of next month.
Thank you, Josh, for all that great insight. Todd Millard, CEO of Crossvale, back here. Let me leave you with the 4 most important takeaways from today's session. First, containers are absolutely mainstream now, but strategy matters infinitely more than just the technology itself. You can have the most advanced container platform in the world, OpenShift, but without the right strategy, you'll still fail. Second, assessment first, implementation second, always. I cannot stress this enough. The organizations that succeed are the ones that take the time to understand their environment and plan properly before they start deploying. Third, platform deployment is just the beginning. Operations expertise is what actually ensures long-term success. Getting OpenShift running is the easy part. Keeping it running reliably while your business depends on it, that's where the real challenge lies. And fourth, the cost of getting it wrong far exceeds the cost of getting it right. We've seen organizations spend hundreds of thousands of dollars more trying to fix problems that could have been prevented with proper planning up front. Here's the 2-part success formula that we see work every single time. Success in container adoption requires 2 things. Strategic planning through proper assessment, that's what our container first assessment provides. And operational excellence through expert management, that's what PodOps delivers. You can have the best container strategy in the world, but if you can't operate the platform reliably day in and day out, your entire digital transformation initiative will stall. Both pieces are absolutely critical. So what are your next steps if you're ready to move forward? First, go to our container adoption journey page at crossvale.com. There you'll find an ebook called Mastering Container Environments. You can download that and review it to learn more. Second, schedule a 30-minute consultation where we can discuss your specific situation. Every organization is different, and we want to understand your unique challenges and goals. You can do that on the Container Adoption Journey page at crossvale.com. And third, take advantage of that special offer we mentioned for today's webinar viewers. Remember, that's only available for the first 10 organizations that reach out in the next 4 weeks. We're also sharing some valuable resources with all of today's attendees. You'll receive today's complete slide deck and a recording of this entire webinar. All of these will be emailed to you within the next hour, so you can reference them as you're planning your container strategy. Here's my final thought for today. Remember, every day you delay your container strategy is another day your competitors get further ahead. The market is moving fast, and standing still is actually moving backwards. But here's what's even worse: rushing in without a proper plan. We've seen too many organizations make that mistake, and it always costs them more in the long run. Take the time to do it right the first time. Invest in proper assessment, invest in operational excellence, and your future self will absolutely thank you. Thank you all for joining us today. This has been a fantastic session with great questions, and we genuinely look forward to helping you build your container strategy the right way. Have a great rest of your day.